I always use it so you're big family. There's a lot of work that comes with that.
Okay, everyone, I think
But you're also part of that
we're ready to
solution.
get
So
started.
we all work together.
It's just starting to get the week, but let's go ahead and start with our program. And I'm so excited to bring Doug here to all of you. We saw him at Survey Christi about a year ago, I think it was. And I said, I've got to bring him to Holy Family. So we brought him here about 6 months or so ago, just for our school families. And I said, why don't we just open it up to all the parishes in the area? He's such a blessing to all married couples. So, and he's getting a lot of his knowledge, not just through theory and books, but through Shirley, his wife, and his 9 children. Isn't that great? 9 children. God bless him. So Doug is excited to work with clients in ways that integrate the science of psychology with what our Catholic faith teaches us about God's design for his people, especially within the dynamic of marriage and family life. Doug is passionate about the sanctity of marriage and enjoys sharing his insights and knowledge with married couples. Doug, welcome to Marriage on Tap.
All right, take a couple comments. Well, good evening, everybody. So here's my first slide. Normally I don't use slides. Normally I use a whiteboard and stuff. It's kind of a big group, but I should do better at this. I should at least have my name up there or something. So, I also have a website, happymarriageforlife.com, happymarriageforlife.com. I should have that up there, which I don't. And I've got some blogs and all kinds of stuff out there. I also have 2 workshops on my website. One for engaged couples, or couples who are seriously dating, thinking about getting engaged, that I call Marriage Discernment, to help them decide, should we really be getting married or not? And if the answer is yes, then what are the skills we need to actually do marriage well and not be one of these divorce statistics? And then I've got a workshop called Marriage Tune-Up, which is for married couples. And so part of what I'll talk about today are things that are on that workshop. But if you like what you hear tonight, you might want to, invest in tuning up the entire marriage, which could be kind of fun. All right? So, marriage is dangerous business, as you know. I mean, 4 out of 10 marriages don't make it. But of the 6 out of 10 that do make it, out of all you all, what's your story? Well, the statistics are that 25% of married couples actually say they're happy. The other 75%, not so much. So what's that 25% do well that the others aren't doing well? And I have the answer to that. And it's not because I'm so smart that I figured it out, but there's great research out there now as to what differentiates the couples who are really happy from the ones who are just kind of sticking it out, and toughing it out and not doing well. So I'm going to share part of that with you today. The deal is there's 3 things you have to be able to do really well to have a good marriage. The first is you've got to be able to manage your conflicts. You are going to have conflicts. You may not have realized it before you got married, but you figured it out shortly after. You married a person with defects. And there you go, right? Yeah. I had a daughter who got married about 1.5 years ago and has blessed me with a grandson already, Douglas. It's a beautiful name for a little baby. But before she got married, she came home one day and said, Dad, I think I finally met the guy. I'm like, you're kidding? No. Yeah, no, Dad, I think this is the guy. Tell me about him. Oh, Dad, he's this and he's that and he's this, and he's so, and that. I'm like, great, that sounds pretty good. Tell me about the boy's defects. She's like, I don't think he has any, Dad. I said, well, bring the boy over. I just need about a half hour. And I'll let you know all the things that are wrong with him. So anyway, over the months that went on, we had some conversations, and she'd go and say, yeah, I just discovered a defect, and I discovered another defect, and okay, can you live with those defects? And that really is the question. So often, marriage boils down to, can you live with the defects that you're marrying? All right, and if you can live with those defects, and she said, I think I can live with those defects. I said, cool. Now, does he know about your defects? She's like, I don't know. I said, bring the boy over. I just need about a half hour, and I can tell him all about your defects. So funny. He said, yeah, we had to talk about my defects, and he thinks he can live with those as well. So now they're married, and they've got a baby, and life is going pretty well for them. So. All right, so you got to be able to manage conflict. We're not going to talk about that at all tonight. You've got to be able to nurture your love and grow your love every day. That's what we're going to talk about. I've got some material on forgiveness, which is the third leg of that stool. You've got to be able to practice forgiveness on a daily basis if you're going to stay married. Don't think we'll have time to cover that, but in case we do, if not, I'll just go through that pretty quickly. All right? All right, so there are 4 different kinds of love. How do you define love? Right, and I love pizza, and I love my wife, but it's not the same. Depending on how hungry I am, it could, go one way or the other. But we just have this one word for love, but love is a lot more complicated than that. And Aristotle figured out that there are 4 different kinds of love. So he lived about 2,500 years ago, as best I can tell. So any idea that's been around 2,500 years is probably a pretty good idea. And then C.S. Lewis wrote a book probably about 50, 60 years ago called The Four Loves. All right, so that's what we need to talk about. When I'm working with couples who are thinking about getting married, I tell them you've got to score out this person you're thinking about marrying at least an 80 percentile or higher on all 4 of these. And if any one of these is missing, walk away. It isn't going to work. Too late for all you all. I mean, it's too late for you, right? So if you're missing one of those, you're just going to have to work to kind of shore that one up. But let's talk about those. The first love is called philia, which is the love of friendship. Okay? As it pertains to marriage, there's 2 different components. We actually enjoy spending time together. We have shared interests. We like to go for walks or bike rides, or we like playing checkers, or we like same kind of movies, or we have a lot of things we like doing together. Now, not everything. You have to have your own separate interests as well. And one of the lessons that's come out of COVID is even the best marriage, if you're together 24/7, that's not good. You need time apart from each other. But you have a lot of things you enjoy doing together. There's this idea of emotional safety. If I asked you, who is your best friend, you'd give me somebody's name. And I'd say, well, why is that person your best friend? And you say, well, because I can tell that person anything. I can share with them my deepest, darkest secrets. When I'm feeling low, they pick me up, and when I'm feeling good, they share in my joy. My heart is safe with that person. That's the idea of emotional safety, okay? Is that's what you need to be for your spouse. You need to be the safest place on the planet. Now, I have no idea what your day was like today out there, all the stuff going on, but you're home now. Now you're in here. Now you're in the safest place on the planet. Nothing can hurt you here now, because I've got you. I've got my arms around you, and now you are safe. All right? When we talk about conflict management, if you ever invite me back again, we can talk about that. We talk about how to build emotional safety in a marriage. Okay, but it's really critical that I know that my heart is safe with you. So friends know a lot about each other. Okay, and they share a lot of common interests and common ways of looking at things. All right. All right, so I want you to look at me. Now I want you to look at each other. Look at me. Look at each other. Look back at me. So my first observation is you smiled a whole lot more looking at each other than you did at me. That's good. That's how that should be, right? So what John Gottman learned, John Gottman is the leading researcher in what marriage is all about in this country. He's been studying marriages for about 50 years now. He's learned an awful lot of really impressive things. One of the things he learned is that we make bids for connection. That's anytime we say or do something just because I want to connect with you. So, I'll be driving down the road with my wife and she'll say, hey, look at that barn. Okay. She doesn't want to get a conversation going about barns. We just hadn't talked for a little while, and she just wanted to connect, right? Or did you hear the ambulance going down the street last night at 3 a.m.? No, I was sleeping. Okay. Well, she didn't want to talk about that. We just hadn't connected in a while. What Gottman found is that when you make these bids for connection, couples that turn and look at each other 90% of the time don't divorce. They just don't divorce. 30% or less have a very high probability of divorce. That one metric, how often the couple looks at each other, is a very powerful indicator of the health of the marriage. It's crazy, right? But think about it. When I'm looking at you, that means I'm interested in you. I really want to hear what you have to say, so I'm going to look at you. If I'm not too interested, I'm reading the paper, I'm watching TV or whatever, you know. Of course, there's a football exemption. If the football game is on, you do not have to maintain eye contact. Other than that. Anybody here ever been to Paducah, Kentucky? A few people. Ah, okay. What is Paducah, Kentucky known for? Huh? Cheap gas. That's true. That's very true. Bourbon. But yeah, Paducah is actually the quilting capital of the world. And how do you get the reputation of being the quilting capital of the world? You have a quilting museum and you host a quilting convention every year. My wife is a quilter. So one year for her birthday, I bought her tickets to the quilting convention in Paducah. Date night, date weekend, so I took her down to Paducah. Now I brought a book to read, and so she'd be out there walking around the convention floor, I'd be sitting in a corner reading a book. And I did flirt with some of the old ladies selling yarn and threads and stuff. Usually I was just in the corner. All right, so Saturday night, very tired, very hungry, pull into a restaurant. Now Paducah does not have too many restaurants that actually have tablecloths. But we found one. And so I go in there, I go up to the hostess, I say, table for two, please. She says, well, that'll be a 1.5 hour wait. And I said, oh, no, I'm afraid you don't understand. I'm really hungry. I want to eat now. She said, sorry, but we do have a table in the bar. Perhaps you would like that. No, see, I'm on this date weekend with my wife. I don't want to sit in a bar. I want to sit at a real table. But I was too hungry, and so I said, fine, we'll take the table in the bar. So now the first thing we do when we walk in a restaurant, the first thing my wife does is she looks around, sees where the TVs are, and makes sure I sit so I can't see any of them. Because I don't maintain good eye contact with her when I can look at a TV. All right, so anyway, so I'm kind of sitting squished into this corner. I can't see TV, but I can see the end of the bar. There's a young couple there, probably about 30, and he's got a beer, she's got a glass of wine. And he's watching the game, and she's doing something on her phone, but they're talking, and the waitress comes, takes their order, brings them their food, they order another drink, and I watch them about 45 minutes. I did not see them look at each other even once. And on the way out, I wanted to give them my card and say, you folks are in trouble, and you don't even know it. But I'm not licensed to practice in Kentucky, so I didn't do that, right? So eye contact is really, really important, all right? Now, you've got the handouts there. The top handout you've got, we're not going to do anything with this, but I want to bring it to your attention. It's called open-ended questions. I think we got about 27 questions there. The idea, and I take this home, use it on date night or, over dinner, but the idea is to develop a deeper understanding of what's going on in your spouse's inner life, how they feel about things. So you can go through there and pick out questions that you'd really like to talk about and ask your spouse those questions and thereby start learning more about what's going on in your spouse's inner world. All right, so I just give you that because that's one way to deepen friendship. So that's the first love of friendship. The second love, whoops, that's the wrong direction. Second love is called storge, which is a gentleness and a kindness, all right? This is things like please and thank you. This is opening car doors. This is filling up your spouse's coffee cup when you notice it's, almost empty without being asked. This is walking past the dryer and noticing that it just turned off and folding the clothes or running the vacuum cleaner or when the place is dirty, that kind of thing, right? It's these little acts of kindness, right? Filling the car with gas or whatever. And one of John Gottman's sayings that I'm very fond of is he says, listen, in marriage, the little things are really big. If you do the little things well, you're going to have a good marriage. So if you develop an attitude of appreciation, and if you catch your spouse doing something good or that you appreciate, and if you tell your spouse that is really very powerful. And if you get in the habit of doing that on a regular basis, that's the fertilizer that helps you grow a really good marriage. All right. So, so here, a message just for the guys. So ladies, please do not listen to this. All right. Just for the gentlemen. What I want to ask you to, what I want to suggest that you do, gentlemen, is later today, tomorrow, whatever, but make a list of all the things you really appreciate about your wife, the things you love about her, the things that are terrific about her, the things that you're grateful for. Make that list. Then go off to the drugstore and buy a box of these, these blank cards. I got a sailboat on them or hot air balloons or something. You open them, they're blank. And on each one of those, you write down one of these things that you really love about your wife, that you really appreciate. And then once or twice a week, you leave that card where she can find it, in front of the coffee pot or the mirror in the bathroom or on the seat of her car. And she's going to open that card, and she's going to start her day smiling because you just told her you love her because of something very special. Gentlemen, what do you think your wife's going to do with that card? She's going to keep that card. And it's going to go in her top dresser drawer. And that pile is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And every time she opens that drawer to get out a pair of socks, she's going to see those cards, and she's going to smile. Okay? It's going to touch her heart that you've taken time to actually write it down. Now, you can send her an emoji if you want to, a heart emoji, that's fine too. But if you take the time to write it down in the card, that's really a very powerful thing, all right? So ladies, you'll be really surprised when he does that because you've never heard that idea before. Now, I've given this advice just about every talk I give on this, and my wife was at a meeting today, and she didn't get home before I had to leave. We actually passed each other on the highway, and we went. But anyway, so she called me, and there was a woman at the meeting today who said that she was at a talk that I gave a year ago. And this idea resonated with her. So obviously she listened, and she wasn't supposed to, but she listened to what I said. So she decided for Lent, for 40 days, she was going to leave a note for her husband on what she loved about him. And my wife said that she said, in 30-some years of marriage, there's nothing I've ever done that's touched his heart that much. He still has those cards today, and he still looks at them. So developing this attitude of appreciation and voicing that, we have no trouble pointing out the times you irritate me. I tell you that every day. But those times you do something really nice, sometimes I forget to talk about that. All right. So we're going to do a little exercise on that. So your next handout is a thing called, it's on the pink sheet, at least for me it is, it's called I Appreciate. We're going to take a few minutes and do this. So I want you to go through that list, and I want you to identify 2 or 3 things that you really appreciate about your spouse. Gentlemen, you may not pick the first 3. You can't just go 1, 2, 3. All right? Actually, read the list, pick 2 or 3 you really like, all right, and then circle them. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to identify a couple things that you really appreciate about your spouse. Now, you each need to identify a couple of things that you appreciate, because I'm going to give you a chance to share that in a minute. All right, let's take another 10 seconds. We'll start with the wives. I want to give you just a couple minutes to share with your husband what it is that on that list that you really appreciate. But you've got to explain why as well. So if you pick how kind you are, you've got to say because, last week we were walking down the street and that homeless guy was there and you went up and you gave that homeless guy a couple of bucks and I was really touched by, your kindness towards that homeless guy. All right, so you got to give an example. Okay. Ladies, are you clear in your instructions? All right, you have 2 minutes to tell your husband what you appreciate about him. All right, 30 seconds. All right, time to switch. Gentlemen, you now need to tell your wife what it is you appreciate so much about her. 2 minutes.
I'm sorry.
All right, 30 seconds.
Number 54, love behind.
All right, let's bring it back. How was that exercise? Kind of fun, huh? Were you surprised? I actually did this. Now I've been doing this work now for like 7.5 years. I had a 36-year career in the corporate world before I made this career shift. Started doing this, and when I was doing my internship, I had no idea what I was doing. I had a young couple I was working with, not that young actually, I had 5 kids. But I thought it would be good if they did this I appreciate thing, exercise in the session, and so I had them do that. And the husband said, "Here's the 3 things I really appreciate about you," and she slugged him in the shoulder. She said, "Those are stupid." I guess we got some work to do here. They are still married. I did run into them actually. All right, but doesn't that feel good though? That this person who I live with actually gave me a compliment and said there's something they really like about me and told me why. That really feels good, right? Wouldn't it be nice if we could do that on a regular basis, right? So hold that thought. I'll come back to that. Last thing I had up here on this slide is accepting influence. The Gottman research says that one of the hallmarks of a good marriage is when you accept influence from each other, when you allow your spouse to influence you in what you're doing, what you're thinking, and what we're doing as a couple, etc. Especially predictive of good marriages is when the husband accepts influence from the wife. Sorry, guys, but that's the deal. When we allow our wives to influence us, shouldn't be surprising. I think there's a scriptural basis for that. Going back to Genesis, when God created Adam, and Adam's running around the Garden of Eden, he's like, not good to leave that boy alone. That boy gonna need some help. I know, I'm gonna create for him a helpmate, right? Well, why didn't he create a guy who can actually help me build a barn or plow a field or watch football? Creates a woman, radically different, right? Whose job description is, go help the boy. Go help him, right? And so when we allow our wives to influence us, to help us, it's working the way God designed it, okay? So it's really important to allow our wives to influence us, okay? All right, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that handout in a minute. All right, so now the third love is eros, which is the romantic love, this infatuation. This is a desire for physical union. This is a receiving love. Pope Benedict wrote a lot about this as a receiving love. I love you because of what you give me, because you bring so much joy and happiness into my life. This is, think back to when you're dating, like, when he walked through the door, it's like, he's here, right? Or the first time you look at her, you're like, your heart skips a beat a little bit. This is this infatuation, this strong physical attraction. There's two parts eros love in marriage. One is the non-sexual touch, which is holding hands, snuggling next to each other on the sofa, watching a movie, hugs, that kind of thing, right? So, if you have children, you know that if the two of you are hugging, pretty soon one of the kids wants in on the hug, and then another kid shows up. Now you got a group hug going, and which now you're tipping over because the kids are there. Well, here's the cool thing. I don't know if any of you know this, but I just discovered it because we're empty nesters now for the first time in 40 years. Yeah, and thank God, it was just a long time ago. Actually, I do kind of miss the chaos. I do, sometimes. But anyway, so the other day, I'm in the kitchen, and I'm hugging my wife, and the dog jumps in the middle. He's on his hind legs, like, what part of this, right? So hugging is very contagious, right? Not just for human beings, but for dogs as well. And then there's, the ultimate expression of marital love, right, which happens in the bedroom. When things aren't going well in the bedroom, generally it's because things aren't going well in friendship and in kindness. And so when I'm working with couples who are having trouble in the bedroom, that's where we focus. Because if we're not kind to each other, if we're not developing a deep friendship, the last thing I feel like doing is being intimate at night. It's kind of like, I haven't liked you all day. You've been nipping on me all day, and you've been a pain in my butt, and now you want to have a party? I don't think so. Why would I want to do that? So if we could get the friendship and the philia and the storge going well, generally what goes on in the bedroom generally takes care of itself, okay? So you've got another handout there, and it's called Building a Great Sex Life is Not Rocket Science. There's, I think, 13 things listed there. I'm going to give you a minute to read through that, and then I'll give you my comments on it. This usually gets the guys' attention more than the wives. Give me that piece of paper. Oh, I'm like, really? All right, so let me just walk through this. I'll give you my read on this. With the exception of number 4, every one of these happens in the kitchen, right? I mean, they say I love you and they mean it every day. That's friendship, right? That's storge. They kiss one another passionately for no reason. Cool, that's a good idea, right? You could do that in the kitchen. They give each other surprise gifts. Okay, and it didn't have to be romantic gifts. It could be like I was checking out of the grocery store and I saw the M&Ms there. I know you love M&Ms, so I bought you some M&Ms. I love M&Ms. That works for me every time. Okay, so they know what turns their partners on and off, right? Of couples who say they have a very satisfying life of intimacy, one of the things they all have in common is they are able to talk about it. And that can be kind of hard to do, even after you're married for 30 years, to have a conversation about that. But they're able to actually talk about it, say, hey, this worked, that didn't work, I'd like to try that, they're able to have a nice conversation about it. Because otherwise, I got to figure it out on my own, and I'm way too stupid to do that. So help me out a little bit, tell me, what works. All right, they are physically affectionate, even in public, right? So this is gentleness and kindness, this is non-sexual touch, holding hands, etc. They keep playing and having fun together, so actually enjoy, this is friendship, enjoy each other. When I work with a couple, I have them fill out this pretty in-depth questionnaire for me. It gives me a kind of an in-depth look at what's going on inside the marriage. Without exception, and the scores come back red or green. Green means things are pretty good in that dimension, red means not good. Having fun together comes back red every time. By the time they show up in my office, they are not having fun together. They are not enjoying each other's company. So they keep having fun, playing together. They like to cuddle, right? They make intimacy a priority, not just something they get around to when they get time. Especially if you've got small children, got some couples here with small children, it gets pretty hard to find time, because by the time the kids are in bed, you're exhausted, right? It's going, oh man, I didn't get this right for this. So sometimes you got to schedule it. I mean, it's okay. It's a really important part of what married life is all about. What's the first commandment recorded in the scriptures? 28th verse of Genesis. I have no idea how many verses there are in the Bible. Any idea? Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. The 28th one. Be fruitful and multiply. The first thing God told Adam and Eve, go act like a married couple and bring some new life into the world. It's important. It's a commandment. Physical intimacy between husband and wife, commandment. All right. They stay good friends, friendship. They can talk comfortably, which I mentioned. They have weekly dates, and we'll talk about that. They take romantic vacations, talk about that later. And they're mindful about turning towards each other. This is the maintaining eye contact. They do a really good job of looking at each other. One of the worst things now in marriages is the smartphone, because my face is in the smartphone. It's on the screen. It's not looking at you, right? So I think smartphones should be banned once you get married. That's my opinion. All right, so that's the Eros thing. All right, the fourth is agape, which is sacrificial and unconditional. All right, this is the we is now more important than the me. I now prioritize you over myself. It is now my life's mission to bring happiness into your world. That is now the most important thing in my life, is to make you happy. And I will subordinate my happiness in favor of yours every single time. Okay? There's 4 parts to it. It's permanent, right? So that's what you said when you got married, till death do us part, right? It's permanent. I'm not going anywhere. You don't need to worry about it. So that's why sometimes couples, they threaten, the D word. It's like, oh no, we're not talking about the D word. It's just not possible. It's just not possible for us. It is permanent till death do us part. When I work with couples thinking about getting married, doing marriage prep work, I encourage them, you need to have a conversation about divorce. Because you got a 40% likelihood of doing that. And you need to have a conversation that says, under what conditions would you divorce me? If I had an affair, would you divorce me? What if I lost $50,000 at the casino some night? Would you divorce me for that? What if I developed an addiction to alcohol? What if I developed an addiction to pornography? What if you just got tired of me and you said, I just don't like you anymore? Would you walk away from me if you just weren't happy with me anymore? Would you? A lot of couples do. I'm just not happy anymore. I have a right to be happy. You're not making me happy, I'm out of here. Especially when you get older. And like we were talking about, the divorce rate goes up in the 60s when you turn into your 60s, because I'm just not happy with you anymore, and I got another 20 or 30 good years. I don't want to spend them with you. Okay? All right, so it's permanent. It's exclusive, one man, one woman. Where we run into trouble on this one a little bit is this whole idea of an emotional affair, where I get a little bit too close to somebody I work with, and now they've got a piece of my heart, so I start developing feelings of attraction to somebody else. So maybe it becomes a physical affair, maybe it never does. Often it never does. But you've got 100% claim on my heart. You've got exclusive claim to my heart. I don't get to share that with any other person of the opposite sex. So I tell people, you got to keep everybody opposite sex at arm's length, and you got to use the left arm, because that's the one that's got the ring on it that says permanent, exclusive. No one else is allowed in. Okay. And this word pornography, it violates that exclusivity thing as well. I could talk about that for a long time. I won't. It's public, right? We get married in a church in front of others with witnesses, etc. And it's fruitful, right? It's open to life, and it's open to the marital embrace. All the other loves I talked about are carnal. This is a spiritual love. This is the love that is, Christ is the role model for this, right? This suffering, this unconditional. I'm going to love you no matter how you treat me, period. You can divorce me, and I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to pray for you every day. I'm still going to worry about you, because my love is unconditional. Okay? And I think we see it clearly, the most clearly, I think, on Good Friday, when Jesus washes the feet of the disciples, right? And you can hear Peter saying, hey, Lord, not my feet. And you can hear our Lord saying, you know, Pete, in about 3 hours, you're going to curse and swear that you don't even know who I am. But I want you to have clean feet tonight. And Judas, you're going to go sell me for 30 pieces of silver. When you go to see the Pharisees, I want you to go with clean feet, because I love you. And you other 10, you're going to run away from me tonight as far as you can go. I just want you to run with clean feet, because I love you that much, even though you're all going to betray me tonight. It's okay, because my love for you isn't contingent on how well you treat me. It's just because I love you unconditionally. Okay. So here's the deal, right? This is the love that makes sense. And if we develop an attitude that marriage is not about my happiness, it's about my holiness. Marriage is the vehicle upon which I'm going to become holy. It's the vehicle upon which I'm going to sanctify my life by sanctifying my marriage. I was listening to a podcast, the preacher talking about his mother was in the Adoration Chapel one day praying, and she was praying to God, Lord, how can I love you more? Lord, how can I love you more? And the answer came to her, love your husband more. Right? We now love God through loving our spouse. That's how we show God that we love him, by loving the person that he joined together with us. Right? I think there's two things that go to make up a saint. One is heroic virtue, and the other is suffering. You can't name a saint for me that didn't suffer a lot in life. And the first step on the path to sanctity is this declaration of heroic virtue. Okay. Well, the good news is you get the chance to practice both of those in marriage. Especially the suffering part. You get a lot of chances to do that, right? So here, we need to look at our spouse's defects as invitations from God for us to grow in virtue. They're actually gifts from God for us to become more virtuous, more patient, kind, more chaste, gentle, to develop perseverance, cheerfulness, understanding, etc. Okay. All saints have suffered. That's the price of sanctity. So just last week we celebrated Saint Josephine Bakhita. What day was that? Wednesday last week, maybe Thursday. You know her story? It's pretty impressive. She was kidnapped when she was 7 or 8 years old and sold into slavery. That's a bad deal. That's not a good deal. Okay. She was bought and sold 5 times. One of her owners was so mean to her that she cut into her flesh with a razor and then filled the wounds with salt to ensure permanent scarring. A total of 114 intricate patterns were cut into her breasts, belly, and right arm. That's not a good life. That's a lot of suffering. Later in life, she is quoted as saying, if I were to meet the slave traders who kidnapped me, and even those who tortured me, I would kneel and kiss their hands. For if that did not happen, I would not be a Christian and a religious today. She looked at all that suffering as a gift from God that turned her into a saint, that taught her how to forgive and to develop deep virtue. Now that's the stuff that saints are made of. You're probably not going to get asked to suffer that much at the hands of your spouse. Certainly, I don't recommend you stay together if there's physical violence. But if we can have that attitude towards our spouse's defects and thank God for those defects, that's a way to have a really good marriage. That's a way to grow in sanctity and holiness. Saint Rita. Anybody familiar with Saint Rita? One of my favorite saints. I had an aunt named Rita who I really liked a lot, right? I've never met a Rita yet that I haven't liked. Is that your name? Are you Rita? No. Okay, you look like a Rita. Okay. Rita was married at the age of 12. Now, it works against our sensibilities now, right? To a nobleman named Paolo Mancini, despite her repeated requests to her parents to let her enter the convent. They're like, you ain't going to be a nun. You're going to get married. Rita was especially beautiful. She would have had her pick of any boy in town, but the parents picked this guy, Paolo, yeah, okay, who was rich, so they wanted her to marry a rich boy, quick-tempered and immoral, who had many enemies in the region. The marriage lasted for 18 years until he was murdered by one of his enemies. Okay. Rita endured insults, physical abuse, and infidelities for many years. But through her humility, kindness, and patience, Rita converted her husband before his death. Okay. She suffered a lot, but she didn't walk away. Right? She turned that suffering into holiness. She got her husband back into the church, saved his soul, and then she went on to become a saint. Of course, you know the story of St. Monica, right? Probably the most famous of the suffering wives. I kept trying to find suffering husbands, and I couldn't. Oh, what? So, St. Monica. The circumstance of St. Monica's life could have made her a nagging wife, a bitter daughter-in-law, and a despairing parent, yet she did not give way to any of those temptations. So although she was a Christian, her parents gave her in marriage to a pagan, Patricius. Patricius had some redeeming features, but he had a violent temper, and he was licentious. So he was a pagan, so he didn't feel the need to confine himself to the sixth commandment, conform himself to that. He violated that clearly. Monica also had to bear with a cantankerous mother-in-law who lived with them. Anybody have a cantankerous mother-in-law? Right. Not good. All right. But by her prayers, she finally won over her husband and her mother-in-law to Christianity. All right. And of course, you know her prayers got her son, Augustine, to convert as well, went on to be one of the greatest theologians of all time. Anybody ever heard of a guy named Reginald Garrigou Lagrange? Father Kime has, a few other people, not many people. He was the spiritual director in the seminary for some guy named Karol Wojtyła, who went on to become John Paul II. Okay, pretty bright guy. And he wrote a book called Knowing the Love of God, which is a collection of his meditations. And then I will end on this note, or close to this note. All right. In his chapter on sin, he says, and he was writing to monks, I guess, people who live in cloisters. We also hear sometimes a reply in monasteries, I can't do otherwise. Do you want me to be like a son to a superior who doesn't appreciate anything I earnestly do, who doesn't like me, who has no concern for me? I cannot. Do you want me to love as a brother this religious who has been jealous of me and has sought by all means to humiliate me? I cannot. There are repugnances which cannot be conquered. And then Garrigou Lagrange says, I cannot. Rather, we should say, I don't want to. My will is too weak. So if we change the wording on some of this and apply it to marriage, it might sound a little bit like this. And we also hear sometimes this reply in marriage, I can't do otherwise. Do you want me to be a wife to a man who doesn't appreciate anything I earnestly do, who doesn't like me, who has no concern for me? I cannot. Do you want me to be a husband to this woman who criticizes me and has sought by all means to humiliate me and does not respect me? I cannot. These are repugnances that cannot be conquered. Could those words apply to us? I cannot. Right? Wouldn't it be better if I say, I don't want to, my will is too weak. I must fight back. I must demand my rights. I must be treated better, or else. Or else what? Or else I'll stop loving you, or else I'll treat you the way you treated me, or I'll just ignore you, I'll live a separate life, or I'll leave you. Would it perhaps be better for our soul, for our holiness, if we saw our spouse's defects as invitations to grow in virtue? Right? Then we could say, thank you, Lord, for giving me a husband who doesn't always appreciate me, who doesn't always appreciate the things that I earnestly do, who doesn't seem to like me at times, or who seems to have no concern for me at other times. Because of him, I've acquired patience and gentleness. Thank you, Lord, for giving me this wife who criticizes me and has sought by all means to humiliate me, who doesn't respect me. Because of you, I've acquired humility. Or because of her, I've acquired humility and perseverance. Wouldn't that be a better way to look at our marriage and our spouse's defects? Lent begins tomorrow. Perhaps we could pick out something that irritates us about our spouse, and that could be our Lenten mortification. We can endure the fact that perhaps she says something a little cutting, or he says something a little harsh to me, right? Perhaps we could say, I'm going to stop criticizing, or I'm going to stop, fighting back when I get hurt, or I'm going to stop those harsh words. I'm going to accept the little pinpricks of each day with a smile to bring more peace into our marriage. That's going to be my Lenten mortification, is to accept my spouse's defects, all right? So I leave that with you. Then one last thing, I don't have time to do the forgiveness stuff, but I want to talk about the secret recipe, and we'll take a break, move on to the next thing. I know I'm running a little bit late. 3 things, that if you do these 3 things, I think you have a really great chance of having a wonderful marriage, okay? 3 things, that's good. All right, first is a 1% daily investment in the marriage. What is 1% of 24 hours? It's about 15 minutes. The recommendation is take 10 or 15 minutes every day, religiously, to invest in the marriage, to deepen the friendship and the affection, all right? So that worksheet I gave you, called I Appreciate, that's your jumping off point. Every day you sit down for 10 minutes, no screens, face to face, go through that list. I really appreciate this, I appreciate that. Make your own list of what you're thankful for. This is your chance to affirm, to compliment, okay? To tell your spouse how happy you are that God brought him or her into your life. Carve out time every single day. Marriage is a lot like a garden. You plant your tomatoes in the spring, come back in the fall and pick some tomatoes. Or you can go out every day, do a little weeding, a little water, put a little fertilizer, come back in the fall and have a really nice crop of tomatoes, okay? If you can invest 5, if you can't do 15, do 10. If you can't do 10, do 5 minutes. Don't let a day go by where I don't find something that I can praise or affirm about you. I tell the story sometimes of, the husband who comes home at the end of the day and he's just dragging, he's just really down and out of energy, and the wife says, hey, what's going on? The husband says, man, I had a tough day. The boss got mad, came in, he slammed the door, he was yelling at me, man, he said, he just beat me up, man, I'm really beat up. The wife's got 2 choices. She can say, well, what did you do that made him so mad? Or she could say, your boss is an idiot. He should appreciate you more. He should appreciate how hard you work and how committed you are to that company. Come here. Let me tell you I'm happy you're home, and I appreciate what you do for us. What's the right answer? Obviously, right? Number 2. But oftentimes we go the other way. Like, what'd you screw up? Your boss wouldn't get mad for no reason. Right? So we want to catch and affirm the positive every chance that we get. That's how we deepen the friendship. 1% investment in your marriage every day. 1 date night a week, out of the house. I don't care if you're an empty nester or you don't have kids, out of the house. Here's the reason. We hang emotions on the physical objects around the house. So if you get into arguments in the kitchen, when you walk in the kitchen, you see different things. That's going to generate subconsciously negative emotions. Okay? So you go to a neutral place where you don't have any negativity. All right? Most couples do the date night wrong. They use it for logistics planning. Who's picking up the dry cleaning? Who's taking the kid to soccer practice? Who's doing this? Right? You can tell they got their calendars out on their smartphones and they're synchronizing. The date night says, I'm gonna take 2 hours to do what I take 10 minutes every day to do, to tell you how great you are, how much I love you. It's just about the two of us. Nobody else exists. And there's no smartphone gonna come in between us. Leave it in the car, okay? But I'm gonna just take 2 hours just to develop how much I love you and let you know that, all right? That's the date night, all right? And then the third one is a weekend getaway per year. This does not have to be like St. Thomas. This could be the Holiday Inn, one suburb over, right? If it's got a pool and a hot tub, you got everything you need, all right? But now I'm gonna take 2 days to do what I take 2 hours every week to do, what I take 10 minutes every day to do. I'm just gonna take 2 full days, relax, and slowly just reconnect with you as someone who loves you and is so grateful that you are in my life, all right? But again, you gotta get away from the home, all right? Which brings up another rule: no fighting under any condition ever in the bedroom. The bedroom is the sanctuary of the home. Only love and good things happen in the bedroom. So if you're climbing into bed and you're getting into a fight about something, get out of bed and go to the garage. All by itself, that'll end the fight. Because you're like, yeah, I ain't getting out of bed. I'm not going to the garage. You win. Good night. All right? So this is the secret recipe. If you do these 3 things, I think you really, really increase the odds of being in that 25% of married couples that are really happy. All right? Okay. That's what I got. All right, so thank you for your attention. I guess more on the program, and then I'll be back for Q&A. Now, I noticed cards and pens. Are they going to write down cards, or are they just going to raise their hand?
They're just going to raise their hand.
Okay.
We'll get somebody to go around.
And here's the thing, too. When it comes to the questions, I know you're not going to ask a question about your marriage, so it'll be your neighbor's, my neighbor's husband, or my cousin. All right, I'll be back.
Let's hear it for Doug. I kind of feel like some of those things we know, Doug, but you did a great job of articulating it clearly. It was really, really well done. Thank you so much. What I'd like to do right now is just make sure everybody is aware that we do have dessert. I noticed that quite a few of the desserts are gone, so we don't know how many are actually left. But if you'd like to get a dessert, we'll take a brief little break here. You can get a dessert, head back to your table, and I would also at this time like to invite Javier and Mandy Andujar to come up and talk to us a little bit about Worldwide Marriage Encounters. So we've given them a pretty short